Please to take your seat. We're ready to begin. So thank you so much. We will begin our consult session with agenda item 17, which is initial guidelines for enabling activities and BBNJ ratification support project. Let me invite Chizuru Aoki to introduce document GEF/C66/07, initial guidelines for enabling activities and BBNJ ratification. Chiz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos Manuel. Good afternoon, colleagues. We have a short presentation ready to walk you through the initial guidelines for enabling activities for the BBNJ ratification support. So the BBNJ agreement was adopted by consensus on June 19th of last year, and it was open for signature on September 20th of 2023. As of today, the agreement has 36 signatories, and one UN member state already has ratified, and that's Palau, as mentioned by Mr. Suarez this morning in his video. And for this agreement to enter into force, we need at least 60 ratifications, approval, acceptance, or accession. The agreement in its Article 52 on funding created a financial mechanism, and it has identified the GEF as part of its financial mechanism. And it also includes a special fund and a voluntary trust fund that are yet to be created. The voluntary trust fund is to facilitate the participation of representatives of developing state parties in the meetings of the BBNJ. And also, as set out in the BBNJ agreement, the special fund and the Global Environment Facility Trust Fund, the GEF Trust Fund, has a number of elements that it has been requested to support. And those include funding capacity building projects under the agreement, assisting developing state parties in the implementation of the agreement, supporting conservation and sustainable use programs by indigenous peoples and local communities, supporting public consultations at the national, sub-regional, and regional levels. And finally, funding the undertaking of any other activities as described by the Conference of the Parties. So here is a timeline of BBNJ and GEF processes that we have seen so far. I think many of you are quite familiar with this progression of decisions as well as processes that have unfolded. Above the blue box, green boxes are the GEF, and the purple boxes underneath are the processes undertaken by the negotiations. As you can see, we have actually taken measures to ensure that the GEF Council is consulted as well as informed of the developments undertaken in the negotiations. And most recently at the June 2023 Council, we responded, there was a document that was deliberated, and that was in response to the adoption of the BBNJ agreement. And that basically talked about the recommending the GEF Assembly an amendment to the instrument in order to add the BBNJ agreement to the list of conventions served by the GEF, and that was done. Authorizing the use of up to $34 million from the GEF 8 International Waters Focal Area for the funding of ratification support and early action activities for the BBNJ agreement. This was already discussed in the previous council discussions too. And also requesting the GEF Secretariat to develop initial guidelines for enabling activities in ratification support projects and present them as a decision document. So the documentation in front of you is in response to the decision you have taken as council in June of last year. Okay. Now we're going to go into the specifics of initial guidelines. I'm going to request my colleague, Jurgis Sapianskas, to present.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all. Let me provide you with an overview of the guidelines that are presented for Council approval today. Let me clarify that these guidelines were developed and will be implemented in collaboration with the Division for Ocean Affairs and the Law of the Sea of the United Nations Office of Legal Affairs, which is currently performing the secretariat functions in relation to the BBNJ agreement. Dwalos has been invited to attend this council and is with us virtually at the moment. GEF aid support to ratification and implementation readiness will be provided as a combination of national level interventions as well as regional and global level activities. The guidelines for national level support that you have on the top of this slide were designed to assist eligible countries upon request in first assessing the extent to which their legal, policy, and institutional framework enable the implementation of the BBNJ agreement. They are also meant to support countries in carrying out their ratification process, and finally, to improve their readiness to implement the obligations under the agreement when it will enter into force. National level support will be provided as a menu of options. That is, recipient countries will select in a menu the activities that best respond to their specific needs. Supported countries will be requested to prepare a BBNJ initial assessment, which will take the form of a report. The report will notably identify the legal gaps for ratification, as well as the priority capacity building needs for future implementation. Each national grant should not exceed 175,000 US dollars, that is excluding agency fees. This amount has been calculated so that we will be able to respond to all potential eligible country requests within the 34 million envelope that was dedicated in GEF 8 for this purpose. We will also provide some global and regional support with two objectives. First, to achieve economies of scale and provide countries with the necessary tools, guidance, and pool of expertise to be used, together with the tools that will be developed by Dwalos through the GEF national level grants. Regional and global support will be also aimed at fostering international cooperation towards the swift entry into force of the agreement, and will be meant to ensure coordination across GEF support across several agencies and several levels of support. It will be also used to promote coordination with similar support programs that will be supported by other donors, and several already are in place at the moment. A maximum of 5 million US dollars has been notionally allocated to global and regional activities. And final slide, first on eligibility. Until the BBNJ COP or BBNJ preparatory process provides further guidance to the GEF on eligibility criteria for the purpose of the BBNJ agreement, support will be provided upon request to developing countries that meet the two following criteria. First, countries must have signed the BBNJ agreement or must have taken meaningful steps towards becoming a party to the agreement, as evidenced by a letter from the relevant minister to the head of the BBNJ Secretariat and the GEF CEO. Second criterion, countries must meet the eligibility criteria set forth in the GEF instrument. Finally, on operationalization of this support, upon approval of the guidelines, hopefully today, we will notify all GEF operational focal points that countries that meet those two eligibility criteria can start submitting their funding requests. We are currently working with GEF agencies in order to be able to approve first project corresponding to the global and regional support, as well as a first wave of national grants by the next council in June. And with that, I thank you.
Thanks so much to Cheese and Jurgis for presenting the initial guidelines for enabling activities for BBNJ. With this, I will open the floor for questions and comments for council members.
Karen, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Sweden welcomes the guidelines and underscores the importance of early ratifications. So we're looking forward to following this work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anil, you have the floor.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Just one question. We just wanted to know the update on the status of the request which was made during the last meeting on the disputed areas policy. If there has been any development in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wei Feng, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and also thank you very much for the presentation. And we support the proposed initial guideline for enabling activities and ratification support projects. We believe it is an important step to promote early entry into force and implementation readiness for the BBNG agreements. 3 comments. The first one is we believe it is critical for GEF to utilize its resources to support the dual objective of BBNG agreement, namely to ensure conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity in a balanced manner. The second is it's also important to support all the substantial parts of BBNG agreement, including marine genetic resourcing, area-based management tools, environmental impact assessment, capacity building and technology transfer, and cross-cutting issues. It should be avoided to focus only on marine protected areas. Finally, given the urgent needs of developing countries to reach implementation readiness for the BBNG agreement, we encourage the GEF to mobilize more resources and focus more on the capacity building activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alf, you have the floor.
Thank you, William. We welcome very much that the GEF is one of the financial mechanisms for the agreement under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea for the sustainable use of marine biological diversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, BBNG. We believe that the GEF financial mechanism will facilitate the building of synergies and help develop integrated systemic projects that simultaneously address multiple conventions. We support the guidelines as they have been elaborated by the Secretariat, and we look forward to further discussion on the issue of BBNJ during the GEF 9 replenishment process. Thank you.
Thank you. Katarina, you have the floor.
Thank you. So echoing what has already been said, Germany also approves the recommended Council decision and therefore supports GEF playing a significant role in supporting countries to ratify the BBNJ agreement, as well as to prepare them for its implementation. However, we kindly ask that this process moves swiftly, as countries are already busy with this progress and support should be ready. And we're convinced that the GEF, as part of the financial mechanism, enables the agreement to implement the necessary measures to conserve and sustainably manage marine biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction by providing financial support for capacity building, research, technology transfer, and the development of innovative solutions. GEF funding enables the exchange of knowledge and best practices and fosters cooperation between nations, as we've already heard before. And then finally, we particularly welcome the inclusion of IPOCs as holders of traditional knowledge within the context of the BBNJ, and request the GEF to consider their special role during the implementation of any related activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Barbara, you have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We're supportive of the initial guidelines and pleased that GEF will act as the financial mechanism for this very important agreement. Similar to a point just raised by our colleagues from Germany, we really welcome the emphasis on supporting conservation and sustainable use programs by Indigenous peoples as holders of traditional knowledge. Very interested in seeing the evolution and the rollout, and also interest in seeing gender considerations being front and forefront when it comes to implementation when we get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rob, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much, William. And thank you, Chiz and Jurgis, for that interesting presentation. The BBNJ, and I promise to try and speak really slowly. I know I know people have been telling me I'm speaking too quickly. So the BBNJ agreement is a historic achievement for the international community and a win for our ocean. And we commend all delegations in their constructive and collaborative spirit in bringing the agreement over the finish line. The United States was proud to sign the agreement along with many others in the room when it opened for signature in September of 2023. The United States has long believed that a successful BBNJ agreement is one that results in meaningful science-based conservation and sustainable use of high seas biodiversity, while fostering capacity building, protecting high seas freedoms, and promoting marine scientific research. The agreement accomplishes all of that and more. The United States is committed to keeping momentum high towards ratification and entry into force of the agreement. And we believe that GEF has a critical role to play in this regard. We are pleased with the progress made in developing the GEF guidelines, which we can support as drafted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yoko, you have the floor.
Thank you, William. Japan welcomes that the BBNJ agreement decided that the GEF to be one of the financial mechanisms and the proposed guidelines for the ratification support. We hope that the GEF support would reach promptly to those countries in need and contribute to the swift ratification and operationalization of the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Faisal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The GEF CSO network, having reviewed working document GEF-C 6607, offers the following comments and recommendations. The GEF applauds the proposal to fund ratification and implementation readiness activities for the BBNJ agreement. We also note the proposed allocation of global support for the development of necessary tools and provision of experts. We encourage that both the global and national grants include specific elements of awareness, outreach, and capacity development, given the clear lack of understanding amongst some key stakeholder groups of the importance of sustainable use of marine biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. We also recommend that unless specifically addressed by the Division for Ocean Affairs and Law of the Sea, the GEF should provide support for technical assistance and consultations for preparation and or harmonization of environmental impact assessment methods and tools. Finally, we welcome the inclusion of support for conservation and sustainable use programs by Indigenous people and local communities in the scope of work, and encourage that this be maintained and expanded. There is much traditional knowledge and practices that can contribute to this important area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Laura Rogenievi.
Thank you. Our constituency can also support the recommended council decisions. The proposed guidelines cover the early stage support needs. The eligibility criteria are understandably very flexible and in line with the relevant policies. We would like to know, however, is there any extra technical support available for the LDCs and SITs in this respect, or can the support needs of the least developing countries and small island developing states could in any way be prioritized? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sam, you have the floor.
The UK supports the recommended council decision. The conclusion of negotiations and the opening for signature of the BBNJ agreement marks a major advance in the protection of global biodiversity. The UK wishes to see the agreement enter into force as soon as possible, and for the Conference of the Parties to begin to take decisions that will have a real impact on the conservation and sustainable use of 2/3 of the ocean that lies beyond national jurisdiction. We welcome the work that the Secretariat has put into developing these guidelines in collaboration with the Division for Ocean Affairs and the Law of the Sea, the United Nations Office of Legal Affairs, which is acting as the interim secretariat for the agreement. We note and agree that GEF support will be provided under the enabling activity modality, and that each national level grant should not exceed $175,000 US. We also agree that up to $5 million US should be available to support regional and global activities, achieve economies of scale, foster international cooperation towards the swift entry into force of the BBNJ agreement, and promote implementation readiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard, you have.
Thank you. Thank you to the Secretariat for your work in developing the guidelines for Council consideration. We are strongly supportive of the proposed guidelines and the support and the GEF being the financial mechanism for the BBNJ. We are strongly supportive of the BBNJ, and Australia and New Zealand in particular played a strong role in the process, and we see it, as like others have said, as a very significant achievement to address biodiversity loss in the global oceans, and this is a significant and momentous time for this to be progressed. We support the allocation of up to 34 million in GEF funding to support the process. And we also are looking forward to discussions on the future operation in GEF 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see anybody online or anyone else asking for the floor, so back to you.
Thank you, William. I would like to see if Cheese or Jurgis has any reaction from the comments from the council members.
Thank you so much, Carlos Manuel, and thank you for the supportive comments all around on what's in front of you as a decision. Couple of points in terms of the provision of support in the expeditious manner. This is point well taken. It's been raised by a number of countries. And leading up to the preparation of this particular document, we've already been engaged in preliminary conversations with the agencies that could actually come in to support this line of work at the national level as well as global regional level. So our intention is to move fairly quickly, also building on the good examples we've had for the provision of this kind of support for Minamata Convention, which is the most recent example we have. So we're very ready to move forward in partnership with agencies. On the question of the provision of support, I think that it was raised by China and perhaps another country. We are providing a menu of options to the countries, and we have listed the elements that are all cogent or relevant for the principles as well as objective of this particular convention. So there is an opportunity for countries to decide what will be the priority gap as well as capacity needs that they have in order to utilize the resources that we can provide to move forward on this one. And at the same time, there is a provision of support at the global regional level. And that is something that we're also collaborating very closely with Dualos, because Dualos will very likely have its own support at the regional and perhaps global level, as well as others that Jurgis mentioned. So our intention is to make sure that the countries are taken care of, but also there is coordination at the global regional support level in order for us to make sure that some of the gaps can be addressed at the national level, but also at the global regional level. I'm going to pass it over to Jurgis to see if there's anything else to be clarified.
Let me second great thank you for the support for the guidelines. I will just maybe react on 2 points, and notably from the CSO network on the need to develop tools and to actually have targeted outreach at the national and global level with the sectoral bodies and regional bodies that will have to play a role in the implementation of this agreement. This is really part of our mind and what we want to do. It will be part of it in terms of specific tools for specific parts of the agreement. This will be part of the discussion to be sure there is no duplication with what Dwalos will be doing, but our idea is to collectively be able to support fully the swift entry into force of the agreement and implementation readiness. Then on the eligibility criteria and support, at this first stage, really the need is for every country to understand the new obligations and the opportunities with the agreement to inform the decision to ratify. And so the need for support is relatively similar across countries, and it will be in the identification of needs for future capacity building for implementation that will have a difference. And so the differentiation will be more in terms of categories of countries, potentially responding to guidance from the BBNJ process itself. We'll have to come in the discussion in the GEF 9 replenishment on how we can best support actual implementation of the agreement once it enters into force. But at this stage, it will be similar, and we provided a menu of options similar for all countries so that they can really work on similar ratification process and identify their country-specific needs so that it will inform our future support for implementation. Thank you.
Thanks to both. With this, I will invite Council members to adopt the draft decision included in document GEF/C66/07. I see no objections. Approve. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chis and Jorges. Now we will go to agenda item 18, which is amendments to the rules of procedure for the GEF Council meeting. I would like to invite our secretary, William, to present document GEF/C66/06/Rev01, amendments to the rules of procedure for the GEF Council. William, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The issue of the rules of procedure has been pending and updating for some time. The last time these rules were updated was 2006. And the Council in 2018, by decision number 8, established the ad hoc working group on governance, and as well as its terms of reference, and entrusted it with the job of following up on the findings of OPS 6 with regards to the governance of the GEF partnership. In June 2022, the report of the working group, ad hoc working group, was presented and the decision was adopted. In that report, the working group proposed amendments to the instrument and amendments to the rules of procedure. Since the amendments to the rules of procedure were dependent on approval of those to the instrument, the Council decided to go first with the amendments to the rules of the instrument, to the amendments of the instrument, the text of the instrument, and that was approved by the Assembly. So naturally, now the task is to make the rules of procedure compatible with what was decided concerning the instrument. And that is what is happening now. Now, to a great degree, it is simply an adjustment of the rules of procedure in relatively minor issues. For example, in the original rules of procedure, when there was a change of council member or a change of operational focal point, it was communicated to the CEO. While in practice, for many years now, it has been communicated to the secretary of the council. And so it made sense to change that kind of thing. We updated also the words of GEF implementing agencies and GEF Council accredited agencies, simply because there are 3 agencies that were the original ones, UNEP, UNDP, and the World Bank, who by mandate of the countries created the GEF through coinciding decisions of their governing bodies and retain the responsibility of approving any changes to the instrument by the same means, that is, getting approval of their governing bodies. So that is also reflected there. Perhaps one of the biggest changes is the issue of the duration of the mandate of the co-chair. Originally, we changed co-chair every meeting, but 3 years ago, it was the council decided that the chair, to provide further continuity and perhaps coherence in the role throughout the year, that a co-chair would be elected for the duration of a full year. That is reflected in the instrument, and it has its counterpart here in the rules of procedure. So that was the original, basically the original text that we sent. There's a short introduction that reflects what I have just said. Then there was the text with track changes, so you could all see what the changes were. The same document that was presented in 2022, essentially. And then a clean version, which is the one you will approve, if you approve it, in the draft decision. Now, we had number of comments, and those comments led to 2 changes, which I sent in the email that I sent out this morning, actually. Let me find it. Okay. And so the paragraphs are 16 and paragraph 26. Paragraph 16 aimed at ensuring that we invite, or the CEO invites, to attend the council meeting, basically the broad range of the partnership. So you have the agencies, the trustee, the staff, the Independent Evaluation Office, representatives of civil society, and indigenous peoples and local communities. All of these are invited to attend. It isn't a change from what we actually do, but it's written down now in the rules of procedure. The other one was paragraph 26. That has a new twist to it, if you like, from the past. And it reads, the GEF CO shall circulate all working documents with policy implications to council members, alternates, GEF focal points, implementing agencies, and council accredited agencies under paragraph 29 of the instrument for comments for a 1-week period. The GEF Secretariat is encouraged to consider the comments received as appropriate when finalizing the working documents for council consideration. In practice, this means that if there is a working document that is one that is subject to decision of the council that has a policy implication, it will be circulated before the 4-week deadline to present to the council, so that all the partners can have a chance to see it and send in whatever comments they think are appropriate. And the Secretariat is encouraged to take them into consideration as appropriate. Obviously, some might be more appropriate than others. And so that's where we stand. So this is the text that's before you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Wei Feng, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, William, for the explanation. Just one question. I noted we included a new reference to GEF accredited agencies in addition to implementing agencies, and we already give a definition for implementing agencies on page 5, but no definition for the accredited agencies. Could you clarify on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anil, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I have the same, thanks, Wei Feng. I have the same question, but also for a council meeting, don't you think that will be a conflict of interest to have implementing agencies and NGOs and others coming who are also beneficiaries of the decisions which has been taken? That's my question, yeah.
Thank you. Richard, you have the floor.
I've only got a minor suggestion in relation to paragraph 26 for clarification, which is to include the words a minimum of 1 week period. Just to clarify, the intention is to provide a minimum, but if there's additional time beyond that available, then that would be desirable. I'd also just like to make the point about the purpose of this is for transparency and seek views. I think it's worth recognising that simply seeking the views of agencies and others doesn't necessarily represent a conflict of interest, because ultimately is the council making these decisions. So getting the input is a valuable part of the broader process for overall better decision making with the information. If the agencies were part of the actual decision process itself, then that would be a genuine conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Faisal, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. GEF's CSO network supports the proposed changes to rules of procedure of the council to bring them up to date. We thank you for the clarification that you made at the beginning about the amendment to the current draft paper to include reference to civil society, Indigenous people and local communities in paragraph 16. That was one of our key points that we felt that would be valuable to add that. If it might please the council and the secretariat to consider making specific reference to the GEF CSO network, which has been operating for 29 years and has attended each of the council for the last 29 years. It might be appropriate to include reference to that name within the rules of procedure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gabriela, you have.
Thank you, William. Thanks also for these amendments to the rules of procedure. As this goes back to the working group on governance and my former boss was chairing that group, we very much appreciate that this is kind of the end of a very long process. We had many years that we were discussing these, and this is really the last tiny bit that was still missing. And just to respond to some of the questions that came up, because or what is the history of these paragraphs? So the paragraph 26 that we're talking about goes back to a very strong call from focal points, but also agencies when we made consultations with them. So the working group had confidential consultations with all members of the GEF family to better understand where they see benefits and room for improvement in the governance scheme. And for transparency reasons, exactly as Richard sketched it out, there was a call for this kind of open consultation that would give a level playing field for all agencies and all focal points at the same time to comment on the intent of a working document with policy implications. And so that's what's captured in that paragraph. We don't see a conflict of interest because it doesn't take away the decision making. It doesn't change the decision making. It remains within the council, and the working documents remain in the pen. The pen holder of the working documents remains with the secretariat, and they are merely asking for comments and are encouraged to consider them where they fit as appropriate, so where they see fit for them. And then they table that to council. It just makes the process of the development of working documents a bit more transparent. That was the intent behind them. The different categories of agencies or implementing agencies has to do with what William was referring to, and it refers to, I think it's paragraph 29, where there's a further elaboration of these other agencies. That's because historically the GEF had these three, and then other agencies were added on to that. So it's a legal reason. We discussed in the working group whether we could make all agencies the same, but all lawyers, all legal advisors told us clearly, don't touch that. It makes it very, very complicated, so we didn't, and it remains this way. But changing that was discussed at length. So I would recommend we follow the recommendation from the many lawyers that looked at this to remain to maintain it that way. But that's why there's a bit of a weird term in there that is not defined further up. On the point of the CSO network, this was an omission, I would say, by the working group, that we didn't already in the original paper propose the addition of the CSO representatives. I think it's very much in line of the intent that the working group had at the time. And we very much appreciate the amendment in the revised document. Thank you for that, William. Referring to the network as a network in the rules of procedure, in our view, wouldn't be appropriate because the rules of procedure are quite a high up legal document, and we don't want to enshrine anything. If you make any change, even if the network would just have a new name, you would have to change the rules of procedure. So we don't want to do that. That's why we don't feel it's appropriate to refer to a specific organization. I think that's all the questions which were raised at the minimum from Richard, I think is feasible, because that's the intent, right? It's a minimum of 1 week. Of course, if there's the possibility for more, everyone would appreciate it to get a little more time to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anil, you requested the floor.
Yeah, I'm not against the consultations and the discussions, everything before the council meeting. I'm fully in for that, because any policy document, it has to come up. I mean, nothing is picture perfect when we start off on that. But the only where I said it is a conflict of interests is the same people with whom we consulted and who are also beneficiaries of the GEF proceeds. For them to be participant to the council meeting where decisions are taken, which is already gone through that process and then comes for decision making, that's where the conflict of interest lies. That's my only stand. It's like in a parliament, you know, before you introduce a policy, you throw it open to the public, you have your consultations, everything. But once in the parliament, it's not that entire representatives of CSOs or everybody's there in the parliament to pass the bill there. It is only the representatives in the parliament who pass the bill, which is the basically equivalent to council members. That is my only position there. Thank you.
Antonella, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, William. Muchas gracias, Gabriela, por las explicaciones. Muchas gracias, William. Muchas gracias, Gaby, por las explicaciones. Coincido esta diferenciación, ¿no?, entre las agencias creadoras y responden al instrumento de gobierno. O sea que muchas gracias por esa aclaración. Nosotros estamos de acuerdo que, y creo haberlo entendido bien a Richard, si te malentendí te pido disculpas, pero nosotros estamos de acuerdo que las agencias participen de dar insumos, no así de tomar decisiones. Las decisiones las toman los gobiernos en el ámbito del Consejo. Después, respecto a la mención de los puntos focales operativos, entiendo que ya están comprendidos en las circunscripciones. Con esto no estoy diciendo que tengo problema que figuren, pero en todo caso también se puede incluir a los puntos focales políticos, no solo a los puntos focales operativos, o eliminar puntos focales operativos porque entendemos que ya están incluidos en las circunscripciones del GEF. Esa es una consulta que quiero hacer. Gracias.
Gabriela?
It's just focal points. We precisely of that. We wrote just focal points because we wanted to make sure it's operational and political focal points.
Perdón, me había quedado con la versión anterior y es verdad, dice GEF focal points. Perdón, gracias.
Okay, well, thank you. I think you've all answered your questions amongst yourselves, so I don't need to add anything else to it. So let's. We don't see a difficulty with adding the amendment that was proposed by Richard, and so we'll put that in the text. Back to you, Mr. Chair. Laura, you have the floor.
Gracias. Es una intervención muy corta. Solo quisiera agradecer, porque
que teníamos la misma inquietud también en nuestra circunscripción como la del Cono Sur y creo que es importante aclarar y en todo caso agradecer pues el ajuste que se le hizo al párrafo, dado porque que vemos que nuestras inquietudes han sido reflejadas y definitivamente valoramos la posibilidad de que los puntos focales en efecto comenten y den insumos para los documentos de los cuales se toma una decisión aquí en el Consejo. Eso es claro que las decisiones están en el marco del Consejo, pero deben ser informadas y tener insumos de los diferentes socios claves, en este caso los puntos focales operativos y políticos. Y por supuesto, si las agencias también necesitan canalizar sus insumos, pues también se espera que sea así. Pero pues es claro que para todos que donde se toman las decisiones es en el marco del Consejo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Anil, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think what the fundamental thing probably you can in the under attendance under 16 you can probably remove the implementing agencies and council accredited agencies. The remaining can be that. I think that should be fine. Fine.
Thank you. But the reason why I can't do that is because the instrument differentiates between the two types. You see, it's what Gabriela was saying earlier. There are two types of agencies, which from an operational point of view are equal, but from an institutional point of view are not equal. Because when the GEF was created, the countries that negotiated the instrument didn't create directly the GEF. They requested the governing bodies of UNEP, UNDP, and World Bank to take coinciding decisions to that effect. Okay, and if you look at the other paragraphs, I'd have to look at the number, but essentially, the responsibilities that remain to these implementing agencies, called implementing agencies, is that their bodies have to approve any amendment to the instrument that was approved to the Assembly for that amendment to come into force. All the others are GEF accredited agencies. They came later, they do not have that responsibility. And that's why they are called GEF accredited agencies, because they were accredited by the GEF to do a specific job, but not to play the role of implementing as established in the instrument. So that's why there's different. I hope that's clear. Hold on.
So why not we just be specific about that or put a footnote to that, because then it becomes clear. Just for, I mean, for public viewing sake.
Well, let me look at the text, because normally we quote the instrument first, and then we put the corresponding rule. I think that's already there.
Yes, it is there.
So, hold on, let me look for the document. Because you see, the paragraph makes reference to paragraph 29 of the instrument, where this differentiation is made. I'm sorry, it took me a while to look for it, but that's what it is. So that's why there doesn't seem to be a need to actually clarify any further. Gabriela, sorry, you have the floor.
Yes, all the terms, that's what I was going to say. All the terms come either from the instrument or from other terms already in the rules of procedure. So we had very lengthy, boring discussions with many lawyers when we did this. So, and especially because when we started this, the group, the council members felt like, can't we just have one category of agencies? Can't we just settle that? It would be, and they all told us it's very, very complicated. So don't do that. We can't because of the legal personality of the GEF, we can't. So we just maintained the three and then put everyone else in a consistent bucket. And that's in the instrument, it's in the rules of procedure, and it's the same term that's always applied.
Thanks, William, for presenting this agenda item, and thanks, to all the council members that has been working on this process. Also, I would like to thank Gabriela for the clarifications. With this, I would like to indicate that we will incorporate Richard's amendment to the document. So I would like to invite council to adopt the draft decision included in document GEF/E/C66/06/Rev01. I see no objections. Thank you so much, council members. Now, the following agenda item is agenda item 20, which is other businesses, but I would like to bring to your attention that we still have pending decisions on agenda item number 5, which is the subject of the streamlining, that we agree on a new draft draft decision text. Then the agenda item 14 and 15 that has to do with the gap analysis. I'll pass it over to William so he can guide us and explain us on how we will address these pending agenda items before we get into other businesses. William, please.
Well, thank you very much. I sent around this morning an email to everybody where I outlined what was pending. So first, we had the issue of amendment of the rules of procedure. That is now out of the way. Then I resent the document that referred to the project cycle for the GEF, where there was an amendment in the text of the decision, and there was an amendment to paragraph 13. So perhaps we should look at that one first and see if there are any comments on that specific proposal, which took into account the many comments received by the Secretariat. Does anyone want to take the floor on that point?
So thanks, William, for that. I would like to invite the council members to approve the draft decision, the new draft decision with regards to agenda item number 5, streamlining the GEF project cycle. I see no objections. Thank you so much, council members. William, can we continue with the pending agenda items?
Yes. Thank you. Let's move on then to the gap analysis of GEF-funded activity and engagement in fragility, conflict, and violence-affected states. And the decision that has been proposed and then says, having considered the gap analysis of GEF-funded activity and engagement in fragility, conflict, and violence-affected states, referenced in document GEF C6609, the GEF Council takes note of this gap analysis and requests the GEF Secretariat to proceed with the proposed actions. So that was the draft decision that was circulated, and the floor is open for any comments. Sorry, Wei Feng, you have the floor.
Thank you for the introduction. I have no problem with this decision, but just minor issues. In the decision, there's a reference to gaps. I report that according to the presentation by the management, the general conclusion of the gap analysis on the social inclusion issues is that the current policy is broadly in line with the evolution, the key aspects and also evolution of social inclusion. So there might be areas need further improvement, but it seems there's no gaps. So I would propose to maybe replace the word gaps with areas. I think this is a general conclusion of the gap analysis. You may wish to clarify on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, you have the floor.
Yeah, many thanks. I just wanted to add that I think that in some of the conversations we had earlier and some of the previous decisions being, some of the suggestions I think we made yesterday I think it was particularly relevant. It applies to this agenda item, but also the next agenda item as well, which is it's useful that as all this work goes forward that GEF is considering and harmonizing its efforts in coordination with other climate environment funds. This is basically to be consistent with the statement with the other funds from COP28. I think there's some wording which has been suggested on that one, but I can suggest that text. I think you have it, William, but I can make that point now.
Thank you very much. So let me give the floor to Abby.
Thank you, William. Just to come in to support the suggestion that the language with respect to taking into account the actions that we did for the streamlining paper, we thought we agree with the UK that maybe adding that to the gap analysis decisions also made sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, maybe Claude can take this one.
Thank you for these comments, and we're happy to include obviously some decision language in these documents as council wishes. Before giving the additional text that we had received after this document or this proposal was circulated, and the question from Japan, I'm not quite sure I understand because, I'm sorry, China. The language that is being proposed is the following: having considered blah, 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 the GEF Council takes note of this gap analysis and requests the Secretary to proceed with the proposed actions. And so what the word gap that refers here is the gap analysis and not the gaps in the analysis. And the reason for the proposed actions is that there are proposed actions in the document, despite the fact that no major gaps in policy have been identified. And one such action is the development of guidelines for agencies and the partnership that would be needed to improve our work and project design and so forth. So I'm just trying to understand if I'm misunderstanding your question or if there's another point that.
Okay, so Wei-Feng, you have the floor.
Yeah, actually, I have no problem with the first paragraph. My comment is on the second one. It's the last sentence.
Let's try to get one at a time. How about that? So
that
because they are two different decisions.
It's two different decisions?
That's right, because it's two different papers.
Okay, I saw it on the same page. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about the second.
I thought it's easier mentally if we go one paper at a time.
So on the additional language, what we received was to insert after the words, the GEF Council takes note of this gap analysis, comma, taking into account ongoing efforts to enhance coordination and harmonization across the climate and environmental funds, comma, and request the GEF Secretariat to proceed with the proposed actions. So that is what I guess was requested at this point to be added to the text that you have in front of you. And we are fine with that, of course.
Thanks, William and Claude for the first presenting this agenda item and doing the proper clarifications. So with this, I would like to invite Council to take a decision on the proposed draft text on agenda item 14, which is the gap analysis of a GEF funded activities and engaging fragility, conflict, and violence affected states. Thank you so much.
Laura, you requested the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Claude. Could you please read it again, the text, because we don't have the version that you are reading. We just have the version that you have sent to us, William. So could you please repeat again? Thank you.
So let me read the entire decision. Having considered the gap analysis of GEF-funded activity and engagement in fragility, conflict, and violence affected states referenced in document GEF C6609, the GEF Council takes note of this gap analysis, taking into account ongoing efforts to enhance coordination and harmonization across the climate and environmental funds, and request the GEF Secretary to proceed with the proposed action. So the additional text, I'll just repeat it because I'm seeing you're taking notes, is taking into account ongoing efforts to enhance coordination and harmonization across the climate and environment funds.
Thanks, Claude, for these clarifications. So I would like to invite council members to agree on a decision that was on the draft decision that was read by Claude with regards to agenda item number 14. I will invite council to take the decision on this one. I see no objections. Agenda item 14, agreed. William, can you guide us with agenda item 15, which is the gap analysis of GEF policies and key social inclusion issues?
Thank you very much. So that is quite similar, actually, only a bit different. But anyway, having considered the text as it was distributed, and then Claude will read the text with the amendment proposed. Having considered the gap analysis of GEF policies and key social inclusion issues referenced in document GEF C6610, GEF Council requests the Secretariat to present to the 67th Council for decision a timetable outlining when the policies where gaps were highlighted will be modified and come back to the Council for decision. Since then, since this paper or email was sent this morning, there has been a proposal to change. So I'll pass over to Claude to clarify that point.
So the proposal basically would add at the end of what William just read, the similar text as we've just inserted into the previous, and I'll read it here. So after will be modified and come back to council for decision, period. The proposed modifications will take into account ongoing efforts to enhance coordination and harmonization across the climate and environment funds.
Any comment on that? Wei Feng, you've asked for the floor.
Yeah, actually what I mean is on this decision, with regard to the sentence where gaps were highlighted, I would suggest to replace the word gaps with areas. The reason is that the general conclusion of this analysis, there seems there's no gaps, but there are some areas we need to further strengthen. You may want to clarify on that. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Thank you, William. With this, I would like to invite council members to take a decision on the explained draft text for agenda item 15, gap analysis of GEF policies and key social inclusion issues. I see no objections. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for helping us in concluding these very important three agenda items. So I would like to thank you all for this. With this, now, just a second. Now I will go toward the last, well, not last, almost close to last agenda item for today, which is agenda item number 20. I'll pass it over to my co-chair, which is other business. I'll pass it over to my co-chair, please.
Thank you very much, CEO and Chair. And okay, it's a pleasure to back with you. So I will now give the floor to speakers who have requested to make some statement under the agenda item of the adoption of the agenda previously.
Nobody asked it.
Okay, nobody. Okay. 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 So, sorry. Thank you very much. Then I will now invite Mrs. Rita, Director of HAC Secretariat, to take up the floor. Mrs. Rita, or Miss Rita, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to address the council members. It's a pleasure to see you. I wish to start by thanking the GEF CEO, Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, not only for hosting the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People team at the GEF offices here in Washington, DC, but also for providing us the opportunity to share briefly with the council members the work that we have been doing since the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework at CBD COP 15. The High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People is a coalition of 118 countries from all regions, co-chaired by Costa Rica and France. The coalition has been working since 2019 to ensure the adoption of a dedicated target to protect and conserve at least 30% of the planet's land and ocean by 2030, also known as the 30 by 30 target. The coalition has grown from 5 country members back in 2019 to 118 members, with China as the newest member joining the HAC at the UNFCCC COP28 back in December. Through the HAC, we have been engaging with heads of state and heads of government, ministers, technical teams, subnational government, indigenous peoples and local community organizations through specific task forces, as well as with key organizations and other stakeholders in biodiversity conservation. Now that the 30 by 30 target has been adopted, the aim of the coalition from now until 2030 is to accelerate action on 30 by 30 and to support countries in its implementation. We understand that the GBF is indivisible, and this is why we have been working very closely with other institutions and initiatives to accelerate the implementation of the GBF in its entirety. As mentioned by the GEF CEO, the HAC is hosted, and if we could please, if you can see on the screen, by the GEF and WRI, and we are very pleased to be working very closely with the GEF teams to align our work and make sure to maximize our efforts jointly. Second slide, please. To advance our agenda, the HAC members have defined 4 main pillars, which will be driving our activities until 2030. The first one is political mobilization, where we aim to continue on engaging with countries at heads of state and heads of government level, ministerial level, to maintain the 30 by 30 implementation, as well as reporting and monitoring at the top of the international agenda. The second pillar is on capacity building, and in this pillar, the main aim is to work with technical teams as well as other stakeholders, and we have developed a knowledge platform specifically on 30 by 30. And lastly, the pillar 3 and 4 are the financial and technical matchmaking platform, where we are working to ensure that we identify together with the countries their specific needs and gaps on 30 by 30, and to match those needs with technical and financial assistance providers from the HAC's partners and network. Within 1 year of operationalization, the HAC Secretariat has been able to develop and launch the knowledge platform and the matchmaking tools at UNFCCC COP28. And this year, we are focusing on engaging with countries to identify their needs and gaps related to 30 by 30. We plan on doing so through regional workshops and engaging bilaterally with countries. Together with our GEF colleagues, we are looking into collaborating in the upcoming ECWs organized by the GEF and the regional workshops organized by the HAC to ensure coordination and maximize our joint efforts. I am happy to discuss more in depth with you after the meeting about the HAC and the involvement of the GEF focal points into our roadmap. I am confident that we will be able to work together to ensure the successful implementation of the 30 by 30 target and of course of the GBF in the upcoming 6 years. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you fruitful discussions in the upcoming days. Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chair, please allow me to address the floor just for a minute. Thank you, Rita, for presenting the objectives and the work that the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People are doing. We feel very proud and honored to have to house this coalition. And it is super important for all the council members, particularly for recipient countries, to put attention on the work that this coalition is doing in the context of implementing target number three, GBF, which is extremely important and extremely relevant. I'm a little bit concerned when I see what countries are presenting to us in terms of projects, whereby the 30% is coming relatively low overall. As you probably have seen with what Claude presented with the work program in terms of the alignment of our work program with the GBF, I see that the 30%, which is one core element of the GBF, is coming relatively low. And I would like to make emphasis that the GEF has resources to support countries in the implementation of the GBF. And yes, very importantly, the target that has to do with the reason why there is 117 countries around this High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. So I would very much encourage countries to look at the HAC and the GEF as strong partners in their political commitment to implement GBF target number 3. Thank you so much, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you very much, Rita, for this brilliant presentation. I will now call on the Secretary Council to give us issues of dates with respect to future council meeting. Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. So the decision that the Council has to take now refers to the meetings for 2025. Okay, 2024 has already been decided in the past, so let's concentrate now on 2025. The two proposals are as following, are the following. June 2 to 6, 2025, in presence here in Washington. That will be the 69th meeting. And the 70th meeting would be held virtually the week of December 8, 2025. If again, the week starting June 2nd, that's 2 to 6, 2025, would be the 69th meeting. And starting December 8th, 2025, would be the 70th meeting. If you agree to this, I will draft the decision properly. But the important thing is that you agree to the dates and the type of meeting. June 2 to 6, in presence in Washington, 69th meeting, December 8, 2025, virtual 70th meeting. Gabriela, you have the floor.
Yes, just sorry, to avoid the issues we've had. Is this in consistency with all the meetings of the conventions, especially the CBD and the UNFCCC? So we don't have overlap, because the dates, just from the timing, sound quite overlapping. So I just want to make sure they are not overlapping with either UNFCCC or CBD meetings.
Indeed. Well, as far as we have been able to find out, the answer is no. I think we even consulted you, and one of the dates that we were thinking of coincided with one of those meetings, so we moved it. And we also had to try to see if we could get the Preston Auditorium for the in-presence meeting. Virtual, of course, it doesn't matter, but for the in-presence meeting, it does. And yes, these dates that I have given you, June 2 to 6, we can get the 2025, we can get the Preston Auditorium. So we're crossing our fingers that this will not change because it's very expensive and very difficult to find an alternative. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you so much, William, for this. Now, allow me to go to agenda. Okay, Abby, please.
Thank you. Just to say, with respect to the dates, at the moment, I don't think I have plans for either of those weeks, so it should be fine. But I just want to just confirm that you have, in addition to thinking about the conventions, you have also been consulting with your fellow secretariats of funds who have overlapping membership, just to make sure that you're, as far as you know, not planning something in the same week they were planning something.
Yeah, well, we keep our own tally, and we have a calendar that tries to reflect every meeting that is happening around the world. Of course, we might miss one, but we do our best to do that. And so far, these dates, amazingly enough, in June are free. So let's try to grab them and not lose them.
Yeah, we took a look to GCF and CIPS meetings. So far, so good. Nevertheless, we will keep on. This decision will help me if eventually they come later on with their own dates, so I can be able to make the case for the GEF. I see no other council member asking for the floor, so thank you so much for this decision or this position. And with this, I will go to just now our last agenda item for the day, which is agenda item 19, which is the joint summary of the co-chairs. As we normally do, we will share the draft summary of the co-chairs by email for the council consideration on Friday, just after the first GBFF council meeting. So we normally do that, and we will do it once more. So I just want to inform each one about it. Okay, just William.
All right. So basically all the issues under the GEF Trust Fund agenda have been covered except one, which is a report of the Selection and Review Committee. As you all know, this meeting is always an executive session. That means everyone will leave except council members, alternates, and their advisors. And it will be chaired by the co-chair with the help of the chair of the SRC, Laura. The report was only finished a few minutes ago, so I just sent it a few minutes ago. Maybe you want to take a little bit of time to read it, or Laura can explain it to you. But essentially, the most important thing is to ask everybody except council members, alternates, and their advisors to please leave the room so that the executive session can take place. This session will not be recorded. So for those who are recording the sessions, please stop the recording. And for the rest, of course, you continue to have your interpreter